Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Purity After Promiscuity podcast, where we are redefining a woman's worth. I am your host, Janelle Renee, and here we are again for another episode in our season 8, titled Rooted, right? And in this season, we are talking about things that are rooted, things that maybe been in our bloodline for a long time, things that may have been a habit for a long time. And we're talking about things being uprooted, right? The things that no longer serve us, the things that are keeping us stuck and keeping us behind and keeping us beneath what God really has for us. And so if that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure you click the follow button, hit the subscribe button, make sure that you hit the notification button so that you'll be notified every time we come out with another episode. And also know that on this podcast, we are redefining our worth as women. We are redefining our identity. We're tearing off every false label. We're coming into who God called us to be unapologetically. We are bold and courageous, right? We are secure in who we are. We are confident in who we are. And we are going forth in purpose, living life for a purpose, on purpose, and in purpose. And so I just say you should make sure that you share the podcast, that you make sure that you are following and subscribing on whatever platform you're listening on so you don't miss out on the great things that we're doing here in this community. And so before we get started, I'm going to release the countdown.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey girl, hey. How you guys doing? I know that I missed last week, y'all. I promise last week was just like a whirlwind. I had a lot going on. I really had every intention to come and to chat with you guys. So I am here this week and I was just having a time of reflection. I was sitting kind of silently before the Lord and just journaling. If you guys don't know, I love to journal. I definitely like to really just filter and process my thoughts, my emotions, my feelings. I like to get things out. It does sometimes just help me feel better. Sometimes it does help me to get revelation. And sometimes it helps me to feel the weight lift off because it's like I am physically trying to cast that burden or those burdens on the Lord. And so journaling has been very effective for me. I have journaled for decades. I have so many old journals and I continue to do so because it's really something that is beneficial for my life. And so if you do not journal, I will highly admonish you to consider it, right? Because and it's different ways to journal, right? You can figure out what works best for you. You can get a journaling app and you can have prompts, that will lead you in what to journal about daily. You can get a physical journal, which is my preference. I have a physical journal and I literally just journal that day, whatever is in my heart. I sometimes title it. I always date it. So if I go back, I can look and I can see at what season, at what time, what moment that I was in, that whatever was happening, I was able to identify that timestamp. And then I also do have a journaling app called Day One. So that's a good one. That one you could just do some like just free flowing journaling, or you can do some prompted journaling. You can set goals. You can add pictures. It's very, very multifunctional, and it's a great tool. And it can help you do a lot of things. You can archive, all kind of things in the Day One app. So if you're a more digital person, you can download a journaling app. Some iPhones come with a journaling app, or you can download Day One. This is no paid advertisement, by the way, or a physical journal. I personally prefer a physical journal. I just am like that. I love a good pen and a good journal, and I love to just get into it. So, as I was doing that this morning, I had a lot of things on my mind, and I just was kind of really reflecting on my life. And so today, this episode is going to be titled, Is it demonic or psychological? And at first, before I just came across that thought in my time of journaling and reflection, prior to, I had another thought of what I was going to talk about on today's episode. So I'm actually going to record a second episode and I might release it either later on in the week or just release it next week. But for this episode, is it demonic or psychological? Now, what am I talking about? Well, as we're talking about rooted, the thing that has really kind of been more prevalent, more just at the forefront of my mind in this season, in these last months, all of 2026, and of course, some of 2025, it's just been the patterns and cycles that I myself notice in my own personal life. And then as I sit down and I kind of reflect on my parents, their parents, so on and so forth, just connecting and identifying and seeing the patterns. And the thing about when we are able to sit down and we're able to kind of go through our family line, our lineage, and we're able to connect the dots, right? You're able to look and say, "Hey, I struggle with this. Wait, my mom struggled with this, or my dad." My aunt may struggle with this, maybe, my grandmother. Like you can just kind of go back, maybe a couple generations, maybe three, four generations, and you will see a common denominator, a common thread. You will see that from generation to generation, there has been a struggle in a certain area, or there has been, some type of hardship in a certain area. There has been some type of heaviness in a certain area, right? And so, as I've been just this morning, because this is my first day of not having a busy day. Um, and so I really wanted to be intentional, to take time to be still, to really just be, centered with my emotions, just and my thoughts, just really, figure out where I'm at, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and just making sure that I spend that intimate time with the Lord, that time to kind of go in those more deep places with the Lord. And so because my schedule tend to be so busy, I have to be a little more creative on being intentional to have this time more often. But on my off days, I like to try to make a point to settle into that place of just stillness, quietness. I'm not going nowhere. I'm not moving. I'm not having phone conversations. Like I'm not on social media. I'm just literally got my Bible, my journal, myself. I got my God box, my prayer box, just kind of taking that time. And I will say that it is so important to have a regular routine of having these kind of moments when we're so busy and all we do is go, 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 move, move, move. All we are busy, busy, busy. And I know that concept booked and busy came out and it was trendy, and it was this term that everybody like, I want to be booked and busy. But the truth is for me, I'm like, no, God, I want to be booked and balanced. Because booked and busy can really create a breeding ground for the enemy to come in because the enemy's one of his main tactics is distraction. And sometimes when we're so busy, and we could be busy doing good things, right? You could be busy building your business, you could be busy raising your family, you could be busy doing ministry, you could be busy serving in your community, right? You could be busy, with school, you're in grad school, you're in college, you're in undergrad, you're in a master's program, a doctorate program, right? Maybe you're in high school, whatever the case may be. Maybe you got high school, you got sports, maybe you got kids and they got activities. And so on and so forth. We can become busy with so many things. And so I'm like, how in the world can we literally be so busy to the point where we don't even recognize how the enemy has kept us so distracted that we're missing out on God moments? We're missing out on God ordained appointments where God wants to commune with us, where He wants, to have intimate time with us, but we're so busy, right? Where we're no longer taking time to pray and having that intentional moments that putting our phones on do not disturb. But now we're kind of just gotten used to just praying in the car on the way to work. Saying a prayer a few minutes before we start our day. We not really spending intentional time, but we're just going through the motions and just making the check on the box. And it's like the enemy loves to get us in that place because it's in that place where God is moving and we'll miss out because we're not sensitive, right? because God says do all things decently and in order, right? And so we should be balanced and not so busy. Sometimes I personally feel like I'm so busy that I literally don't have time to think or have time for myself. And while it's not like every single day, it's the majority of the days. Even on my off days, some days I can be busy. I can be ripping and running. I could be having to do this, do that, because on the days I work, I don't typically have time to take care of other things because I'm at work the majority of the day or all day. So on my off days, I have to reserve those days to do those things that I needed to do that I couldn't do on the other days. So even on the days I should be resting, even on the days I should be having downtime and I should be just doing nothing, I find that I'm still busy. And then I have to question, am I busy doing things that God ordained for me to do, or am I just busy doing? Because the truth is, when we get to heaven and we're in front of that judgment seat, we're going to be judged on the things we did or did not do that was God's purpose, plan, and will for our lives. Just because we were busy doing things, just because we're busy serving, just because we're busy volunteering, just because we're busy leading, a Bible study or a women's group, just because we're busy doing, this, that, or the third, does not always mean that those are the things that God wants us to do. That's why making sure we're not too busy to spend time with God. So God can reroute and direct us if He needs to. Or He can continue to impart in us a strategy on how not to be overwhelmed with busyness, but to have more of a balance and a peace. So today, I'm going through my life. I'm just going through decisions I have made, choices I have made, and the reality of the statement that someone said, I think a couple years ago, that I heard them say that your life is a totality of your choices, of your decisions. So you're one decision away from your greatest life, and you're one decision away from your worst life. But it's all about decisions. So today I was really just in deep thought, and I was just examining my decisions over this last year, over this last 6, 7, 8 months. And I'm like, while I have made some decisions that, bore good fruit and that, I'm very at peace with, and has really been beneficial. There's a lot of decisions though that I made that in the onset seemed like a good decision. And it proved to end up not being so much a good decision. And I find that I have a pattern of that, if I'm honest. I only can talk about me. But I find that I have a pattern of making decisions in the moment that appear to be good decisions and that will bear good fruit. And then I make the decision, and then in the long term, it proved not to be a good decision. So as I'm really filtering through that. And I'm like, Lord, what is causing me to keep doing this? Like, I have a pattern. There's been a cycle in my life to where I make bad decisions. They seem like good decisions, but they ultimately become bad decisions. And I'm like, Lord, is it that I just don't, is it that my reasoning and my logic just not, does not like kick in? Is it that I just ignore the warning? Is it that I'm just moving too fast and I don't take the time to really be patient to wait? Am I just impatient, right? Like, what is causing me? Even outside of the fact that I can look over my generations and I can see that my mother deals with bad decision making. My grandmother deals with bad decision making, right? I can look at my dad, bad decision making, so I can go back through the family line, but it's like here I am, I'm a child of God, right? And while I understand that generational cycles and patterns are going to perpetuate until they are broken, and becoming saved, receiving Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, being baptized by water and being baptized by the Holy Spirit with the evidence of peace, speaking in tongues, or the evidence of the power of God at work in you, does not automatically mean that you will have broken that particular cycle or pattern in your life or in your bloodline. There is work that has to physically be done. However, I'm like, as a child of God, Lord, and as I have done so many things that I thought was the answer to breaking down these cycles, like, and I've said it over and over again in just different episodes. Like, it's not like I'm just sitting here twiddling my thumbs, hoping, wishing, and praying that these cycles break. Like, I've really done a lot of work to break certain cycle, all the cycles in my mind, in my life, and I just have been perplexed because I'm like, well, God, is this is it demonic? Like, is the has the cycle not been broken in the spirit realm? But then my second question that for the first time I asked myself today or asked the Lord is, or is it just psychological, right? Because I was having a conversation with someone the other day and we got on just the history of people of color, right? Of black people and how when we were brought to this country, the transatlantic slave trade and all the other forms of the way that we were taken from our original place and brought to this land, and it when it came down to black people becoming slaves, that wasn't just like a easy feat, right? It wasn't like these people was able to bring another group, a large group of people, right, to a former foreign land, and these people automatically conformed to being subservient and docile and becoming slaves because that is not in your human nature. And while I am not like a person who is like idolizing my culture. I'm not the type of person that's so pro black that is on the borderline of prejudice or racism or any of that, right? I love all people and I do not hold things that happen historically against people of that particular race just because they might have a descendant, that was involved, right? I mean, no. But the truth is, as black people, as a whole, we are a strong people. We are a powerful people. We are just like most cultures. Every culture is going to have its strengths. It's going to have, its attributes, right? That are powerful, that gives them, and that is, solely connected to their particular cultures. They're going to have their particular nuances. They're going to have their, particular things that differentiate them from other cultures, right? Every culture has their things. And so I am a black woman. All I know is about the black experience. All I know is about the black culture. All I know is about black people, right? And for a people to come from to be a such a strong people, such a powerful people, such an intelligent people, such a gifted people, such an innovative people, on and on and on we can go. And again, I'm not saying this to minimize or to try to demean or to try to disrespect or dismiss any other culture and their characteristics that are the same. I do believe every culture is powerful, is beautiful, is wonderful, and have great, and unique characteristics, right? But talking about just the black experience, to be that kind of people and to be brought to a foreign land and to become so subservient that you endure so much abuse and hardship. You endure going through your family being torn apart, your kids being taken, your wife being taken, your wife or children being, sexually abused, you yourself as a man being sexually abused, you having every form of your dignity and humanity stripped from you. Because this is what we're talking about. We're talking about turning a person, a human being, into something that they were not created to be. And as we're having this particular conversation and talking about this experience, and and then so I mentioned Like, how was a group of people able to do that to another group of people? I'm like, well, I read the Willie Lynch letters, and how he learned how to tame a wild horse. Like a wild horse, a stallion, a mustang, a wild horse. A horse is like 2,000 pounds, 1,500 pounds, or whatever, how much they may weigh, of muscles, right? And they have an innate sense of survival and well-being in their natural environment. The horses that are born and bred in the wild are wild horses. These are not horses that you about to be able to go put a saddle on and hop on and ride on. No, these horses, they just are not broken in that way. But he learned how to break the horses psychologically. It wasn't mostly that he had to do it. He started out physical, but it was more so a psychological. And he talked about how that you had to rewire the mind of the horse in order to get the horse to now become something that it was not created to be. So no longer is this horse understanding the power that it has. No longer do this horse understand that it's created to be in the wild and to live freely. Now this horse, over time, through psychological and physical through psychological rewiring and physical harm, has been reconstructed to become something it was never intended to be. And now this horse has become docile. And now this horse has become tame. And now this horse has become afraid and subservient of this individual who now seems to have more power than it. So he told the slave masters in this country and sent letters on them and told them to take that same methodology of taking and rewiring psychologically the brain and the mind of a horse to cause them to become subservient and docile to humans. So while there was a physical force in play, right? Because you had some of the people, those that were brought over here, that just wasn't on it. Like they just was not about to be put in these shackles and become cattle and be slaves. And those are the ones that probably lost their lives. However, the ones that did not and became like cattle, this is why the reference that they were called cattle, because they were no longer looked at as humans. They were looked at as animals. And that it was a physical rewiring of the mind, of the brain, psychologically, to cause this entire group of people to become subservient and docile, and to become um like having a mindset that they are inferior, right? And that fear began to teach them that they had to conform to a way of life that was not normal, or originally that was not ever supposed to be who they were. So we were talking about that, right? And we're talking about, like, now these things happened from the 1400s, to the, early 1900s, right? But here we are in 2026, and for particularly those of us that are in the black community in America, the effects of the psychological rewiring of slavery still is perpetuating fruit even in 2026. And now we see that in our community, we're very divided. In our community, we are harming ourselves. In our community, we don't come together. Most of the time, it's comparison, it's competition. It reminds me of maybe those that were enslaved that maybe had to work in the field versus the ones that had to work in the home because they were lighter skinned or fair skinned, or they probably was biracial, because we know that slave masters was having sex with some of the slave women and they were making babies. And so, now you have racism between a culture, right? Now you have colorism, right? Now you have degrees of separation. Now you have, where instead of being unified, now you have where there is animosity between a people. right? And now in 2026, we see where we are as a people very behind in certain regards. It's because we don't know yet, we haven't figured out how to come away from the psychological rewiring. So no longer did the slave masters have to always use physical force because once these slaves start having children, and then they start having children. No, they no longer had to always use physical force and intimidation. That it just ended up becoming a way of life. They rewired and restructured the whole entire race of people's total dynamic and livelihood and existence on this earth. And so now, when they had children, their children automatically had to conform to the slave mindset. They had to automatically conform to the slave mentality. And then they had children, and it was the same. And they had children, and it was the same. So no longer was the fear. And yes, there was still fear because, of course, we know there was still abuse and beatings and hangings and lynchings and all of the things that still happened, but it could become less and less because no longer did they have to physically force you to become a slave because you the psychological rewiring begin to perpetuate through the generations. And so we can look today and we can still see poverty mindset. We can still see division. We can still see hatred. We can still see animosity, right? We can still see all of the things that is a result of what was done to a people to rewire their mind. And so now that I'm looking at myself and I'm looking at this generational pattern in my bloodline, but me knowing that I'm a child of God and me knowing that I've actually already did the things that I know to do, God, if there's something else that I'm missing, to tell me to break that pattern. And so as far as it being a demonic stronghold, right? As far as there being some demonic influence that is causing me to be in that place, that I know the power of God is greater, and I know the power of God is power is it works, and I know the power of God is has already set me free in so many areas, but yet and still I'm still walking though in a particular mindset. I'm still walking though in a particular way of thinking and way of being and way of doing that now I have to question, like, Lord, is this a demonic spirit or is this psychological? Is this the psychological rewiring that happened to my bloodline that now I gotta just deal with it on a natural level because maybe I've already addressed the spiritual component, but now there's the natural component. And I think that is something that is very missed when it comes to deliverance and inner healing, because deliverance and inner healing is going to deal with bringing you back whole. It's going to deal with restoring your soul, right? And deliverance is going to deal with the spiritual oppression from evil spirits and demonic strongholds in your life, in your bloodline, doors that have been opened because of your sin and your choices, or sometimes just things that pass through the bloodline. It's going to deal with those spiritual things. But then there's the natural part, there's the psychological part, right? That you have to be willing to do the work. And so for me, I think I assume that even going through deliverance, to deal with these things, right? Doing prayer and fasting, doing, deliverance, doing inner healing, doing, all of the things, renouncing the breaking covenants, the repenting, all of the things, right? However, the things that I have not done is I haven't just made a choice. Going back to what I said previously, your life is a totality of your choices, of your decisions. I didn't make a choice to now do the work, right? It's not automatic. It's not like if you have had a generational curse and mindset of poverty and you get deliverance. Maybe there is a spirit of poverty. Maybe there's a spirit of lack, right? Maybe there's a devouring spirit, right? Maybe it is spiritual. But once that door get closed, it's not automatic. You're not gonna just wake up the next day and know how to budget. You're not gonna just wake up the next day and just know how to handle your finances. You're not gonna just wake up the next day and make better decisions concerning your finances that is going to, cause you to get into a place of financial stability. That's not how that works. You now have to rewire your mind. Come on, somebody. The Bible says in Romans 12:1 and 2 that you have to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And because we have been psychologically rewired, whether it's because it's just generational in our bloodline, or maybe it does stem from, our ancestors and descendants that were physically enslaved. There is a part that you play, and that is you have to renew your mind. You have to now unlearn and relearn. You have to fill your mind. You have to now you have to, oh, it's a word, you just have to begin to immerse. Come on, thank you, Holy Spirit. Immerse yourself in financial books. You maybe need to take some classes, some courses. Maybe you need to read some books on finances, biblical finances. Maybe you need to join, I know people. It's a young lady on Instagram, and she is a believer, and she is someone that helps people. She calls herself a financial, I can't even remember what she called, but she basically got her and her family, out of debt using biblical principles and stuff. And now she teaches other people how to do the same thing, how to live your life financially as a good steward, being a good steward, biblically based, using biblical principle, using the scriptures, things of that nature. There are people out there that you can join a free webinar. You can join their group, for free. You can buy, maybe their course, or, get some one-on-one or whatever. You can listen to podcasts about finances, and anything else for that matter, right? If you're struggling with parenting, right? There's people out here that are, talking about, biblical parenting, how to be a better parent, if it's being a spouse, if it's business, on and on and on. But you have to be willing to do your due diligence, because sometimes we think things are demonic. We think it's some type of demonic attack, but sometimes it's just psychological. You actually got to renew your mind so you can be transformed. The spirit might be gone, but see, you're still living out the fruit. And so for me, I'm posing the question to myself, and I pose the question to you: is what you're dealing with, is the cycles, is the patterns, right? Is the perpetual, unfruitfulness, is it demonic, or is it psychological? Do you just have to set your mind to say, I'm going to do whatever it takes to unlearn the bad habits, unlearn the wrong way of doing, and relearn the right way, and relearn the biblical way, right? Because it's going to take work. You could already be delivered. You could already be free. Like, the enemy don't have that much power. The power of God is the greatest, right? Who the Son set free is free indeed. But sometimes we're just not free in our mind. That's why the enemy likes to attack our mind. Because if you can capture the person's mind, then you got their heart. Because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, and out of the heart flows the issues of life. And the heart and the mind is connected. And so whatever the thought goes into the mind, and if it's not cast down, if it's a not a good thought, then eventually it goes into your heart. And next thing you know, now it perpetuates in your actions, in your behaviors. So you have to say your mind, even with the word, even if when you first become saved, right? And you don't know the things of God, you don't know the Bible, you haven't read the scriptures, or maybe you don't understand. You have to set your minds on things eternal. You have to think on things that are lovely and holy and praiseworthy. You have to meditate on the word day and night, so you shall have success in all you do. You shall have that word hidden in your heart, that you may not sin against thee. You have to be transformed by the renewing of your mind, by meditating on that word, by eating that word, reading that word daily, so that word can read you. You have to do that. It's not enough to just confess Christ. That's wonderful. That's great. That's the greatest and the most important. But from there, you still have a responsibility to be transformed by the renewing of your mind, transformed through the word, like becoming a new creation in Christ Jesus, because it don't just happen overnight. That's why many people get saved. They go to a service, they feel emotional, they go up to the altar, they crying, they repeat after a person, they have this great experience, and then they go home to their life and things don't change and they go right back to the same thing that they were coming out of. Is because you have to renew your own mind. And I think that is the revelation. Some things we stay in cycles and patterns. The enemy don't have to send an evil spirit to oppress us. The enemy ain't doing that. The enemy don't gotta send a demon to keep us in bondage. No. Because he was able to psychologically rewire the minds of our descendants, of our family members. And now we just have perpetuated from generation to generation. So breaking that generational curse, if we really want to know how to break the generational curse, you got to be willing to do the work. You got to be willing to make the changes. You got to be willing to sacrifice. You got to be willing to get disciplined. And you got to get so desperate because it's not going to be easy. Like changing a bad habit ain't easy. Some of them are like y'all. I mean, I was a coffee drinker. You hear me? And not because coffee does something for me. It does not keep me woke. It does not wake me up. Yeah, I just like the taste. It just tastes good to me. I like the different type of creamers I can put in it. I like it cold. I like it hot. Iced coffee, cold coffee. I just like coffee. I just like the taste. I love chocolate, and it's kind of a chocolatey taste to me. So I drink it, and I was drinking it every single day. And I have been drinking it for years. But here's the kicker though. Let me be 100 though. The Lord told me years ago, and I mean years ago, to stop drinking coffee, and particularly because of the caffeine. And not just because the caffeine is addictive, but the caffeine is unhealthy. And it's especially unhealthy for women because it can raise our cortisol level and it can add weight to our midsection and it can add inflammation in our bodies, and which will can lead to other things like, being more susceptible to diabetes and things of that nature. And so, therefore, God told me years ago, and I did stop then because then I was drinking coffee like every day. But some way, somehow, I went and back and picked the habit back up. And next thing you know, I started back drinking coffee. And y'all, I can't even make this up. I started like feeling like I was being having so much inflammation in my body. I was gaining weight like nobody's business. And I mean, to the point that I would be like, it felt like I would go to sleep and wake up and literally like just weight would be on my body, more weight. It was crazy. And it wasn't because I eat crazy. It wasn't because, I just, am gluttonous. I couldn't figure it out. Like I was just getting, just gaining more and more weight. I started being inflamed. So I started waking up and my feet would be swollen, my ankles would be swollen, so much so that I could touch my ankle and it would end in because I had that much edema or fluid, right? My hands and wrists would be swollen. I felt like my neck was, getting puffier and like more, inflammation around my face was becoming more and more round. And I'm just like, what in the world is going on? And so I started taking all these supplements. I started doing all these things. I started trying to, get more active, but it didn't seem like nothing was working. And so finally, one of my clients came in and she was talking about some things she were changing in her life. And she was talking about, coffee was something that she was giving up because coffee was unhealthy. She brought up the raising the cortisol and, the sugar. Because for me, I ain't drinking black coffee. I'm drinking coffee with a bunch of creamer in it. I like my coffee light skinned, okay? And so as we're having this conversation, it was like all of a sudden a light bulb went off. Literally. All of a sudden a light bulb went off. And I knew in that moment, I was like, oh, I gotta give up coffee. So I ended up giving up coffee like that next day. I think did I drink coffee that next day? Or no, I think I had coffee that same day because I had already drank some. But the next day, I did not drink coffee, and that was a couple weeks ago, and I have not drank coffee since. I have not wanted to drink coffee, but it was a decision. But I'm gonna be honest and tell y'all that one decision in this short amount of time since I have stopped drinking coffee, I do not wake up swollen. My ankles are not swollen. My feet are not swollen. Sometimes my feet, it would hurt for me to walk like to the bathroom a little bit because my feet would be swollen. My wrists are not swollen. My hands are not swollen. My neck has definitely gone back down to normal. My face is not round. My stomach, like my midsection, has gone down. And I believe it had to do with the fact that I was drinking so much coffee plus the sugar, but that my cortisol level was being, constantly elevated. So weight was just, just continuing to, pile on me as well as I was becoming inflamed. And if you have a lot of inflammation in your body or mucus in your body, that leads to a lot of other, different types of illnesses and conditions. And so I just made a decision. That one was a little easy. But when it comes to making a decision to do something that is more difficult, like change my whole thought process, mindset, and behavior around money, changing my whole thought process around and mindset around my business, around my family, around relationships, all that. Those things are not as easy. So you just have to like sometimes instead of trying to eat the whole elephant, you got to take one bite at a time, take it one thing at a time, one day at a time, and eventually you'll get to where you're trying to go. But you got to be willing to take a step, and you have to be willing to make the decision, and not just make the decision, but to act on it. And even if you don't see immediate results, like just stay the course because everything ain't gonna be instant gratification. Some things you just gonna take time to change a habit. What do they say? Take like 21 days. So you might fall, but you just keep getting back up. But sometimes the biggest, our biggest enemy is our lack of knowledge and understanding, and not understanding that we already free, but we're not walking in that freedom because we're not willing to do the things that needs to be done in order to walk that freedom out. Jesus has already done it all. God has already done it all. Like we have to show up. Okay? Show up for you. If you can't show up for nobody else, show up for you. Show up for you because you have children or you want to have children. Because you understand that there's going to be a legacy and there's going to be people that's going to come behind you. Just like I can look back 4 generations for sure and I can see the patterns. And maybe nobody had the revelation to rise up to say, no, I'm going to change it. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to, rewire the art, my mind. I'm going to be the one to stop the generational cycle of negative, behaviors and patterns and thoughts and mindsets and decisions and all of the things. Maybe nobody else before you had that revelation, or maybe they did and they didn't know how to walk that out. But if you're listening to this podcast, 9 times out of 10, God gave you the revelation and God chose you. And while it seems like it is bigger than you, it seems like it's not fair, it seems like, that it's impossible, all things are possible with God. If you commit to Him, He will help you. He'll help you. And I have to take my own advice, and I am. And I just wanted to have this conversation with y'all because I'm like, you know what? It may not be demonic. It just might be psychological. So I hope this blessed you guys. It's a lot longer than I wanted. I try to keep these episodes at 30 minutes, but it was just a lot to say. And so I'm going to end it here, though. And I just want to say, 'cause like I said, you can partner with this podcast by sharing with your community, by liking, by leaving a comment, rating, give us a good rating so we can get in front of more people, following, subscribing on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. And I just want to tell you that your past does not define you. It develops you, and you are worthy.